Hey, it's Inve. I'm back with another cookie cutter build guide, this time with a medium weight reverse joint that should tear up most other light and medium weight builds in its weight class. If you enjoy this kind of content or want to see more Armored Core 6 news as it comes out, please subscribe. I'm getting close to the point where I can make money off this stuff, and I would really like to. With the shameless begging aside, let's get into our weapon choices. For our right arm, we are going to be using the Captain. It's a great option as both of the handrails are. We're using it because it has a higher magazine capacity and a little bit less energy consumed per shot than the Piton. The Piton is also a phenomenal option, but I personally am relatively poor at energy management, and my aim isn't amazing, so I prefer to use the Captain for its higher ammo count and easier energy management. Um, One of the big reasons that handrails are used is the ballistics velocity stat on them. As you can see, it is very, very high. Um, Ballistics velocity is kind of an amazing stat in this game because of the way the game is coded in regards to online play. Basically, people are pretty desynced from what you actually see on screen. So the faster your bullets move, the more likely they are to actually hit the enemy in the position that they were when you fired. So, higher projectile velocity is better. Guns with especially low projectile velocity, like Gatling guns or Gatling cannons, or chain guns, are rarely used because of how rough that stat is. Their bullets can't even reach enemy players in a lot of cases. So, if you're trying to figure out what makes weapons really good in PvP, ballistics velocity is definitely a big part of it. Moving on to our left arm unit, the Motor Cobra. It is kind of best in class for machine guns, does great PA strip, does great damage, it's got great range, it's just great. You'll see it in a lot of builds. And on to our back, we have the Travers. Another great weapon, has phenomenal damage, a lot of ammo, and a decent fire rate, as well as good projectile velocity. Another awesome option is the Sapla, which has a better fire rate but a much lower magazine capacity. Um, we love both the Sapla and the Travers. If you feel you want to cut more tuning points and weight and we put them into something with greater refresh rate, or if you just feel like you want to be lighter, you can always drop the Travers and move over to the Sapla to move a little bit faster. On our other side, we have another returning thing from the last build, the MPO-203. These scatter missiles are great because they are relatively hard to dodge and relatively hard to flare when up close, and they do good damage. On our shoulders, we're using the 061 relation missiles. These are awesome for their high ammo count and because they fire in a relatively challenging to dodge pattern. As I mentioned last time, these are a lot of the time the only spread relations that will be used, just because the other relation missiles have relatively low ammo counts, or their missiles that they fire are pretty slow. That pretty much covers the weapons. We don't have any hanger units on this guy because if you run out of ammo, you'll probably just die. And yeah, pistol's not going to save you in that case. For head, we have a very commonly used part, the 047 and 02 head. It's very commonly used for its amazing camera functionality. It's just great. It's a really good head. It's solidly meta. The solar core is used in this case because it's a light core that has solid defensive values. Not too much to say there. Once again, it's just pretty good. For our arms, we have the 063 arms. They are another returning piece. These arms are great because of their high precision, their high aim precision and maneuverability skills. Something that is they also have relatively neutral energy weapons skill, but in this case that doesn't really matter because handrails are not affected by the energy weapon skill. The projectiles they fire are physical, and so they don't get the damage bonus that things like laser rifles would get. Moving on to the legs, we're using the XR legs because they have enough weight to hold everything, and they are reverse joint legs. That is pretty much it. If you feel like putting a whole ton of points into load tuning and using the Sapla, you can make the Alicia legs work, or the Saubi's legs work. However, I find that the additional ammo capacity that the Traverse gives is pretty helpful sometimes, so I like to use the Ekazar legs so that I'm able to run the Traverse over the Saplo. Um, Again, some people may disagree with that choice, but parts are on the table. You can feel free to assemble them how you like. For our FCS, we're running Judith because this build lives in kind of medium ranges, and I prefer the radar refresh rate over Hogires. Um, the additional walk distance doesn't really matter for the ranges that this build tends to play at. So, again, I prefer the radar and the better lock speed of Judith. Generator, we're going Sombrero. Not much to say about that. High output number good. If you feel like running Winston, I suppose you could. I don't do that though. Virtue main because we already go up great with our jump, so there's not really a need to run Elia. Latona back because we don't tend to be flying backwards frequently. And Hollow side to make up for our relatively poor turning speed due to being reverse joint legs. And for our overed booster, as usual, using KB Judith. This one is commonly used because it consumes the least passive energy and weighs the least. We don't really press the overboost button. That pretty much covers the build section of this. We'll move on to the tuning section now. Tuning wise, we have just enough load so that we are not over encumbered. And then we have energy output and capacity tuned. Just to get more energy output and capacity. Those are relatively self-explanatory. Maneuverability is tuned up in this case so that our arms are a little bit better at moving and pointing our guns at targets. I would say this is generally a priority tune. Lock speed is tuned as well. Once again, I would say generally a priority tune. In this case, I put my leftover points when I was done in radar refresh rate so that I can keep my enemy on radar a little bit easier, as I am kind of a radar reliant player. And then in the boost section, instead of tuning vertical thrust as normal, we've tuned horizontal thrust, just because this is a reverse joint build, so a lot of the time your vertical thrust is going to be kind of replaced by the height of your jump. So I feel that it's not necessarily as required to tune vertical thrust, and that extra tuning can be spent on horizontal thrust in this case, just to go faster forward. Main boost, quick boost, and side boost, quick boost are of course tuned because it's very good to do that, and you probably should always do that. And of course, turning ability is tuned because turning ability is like a great stat. You should always tune this as well. That pretty much covers the tuning portion. Now let's move on to the play portion. Again, I am going to be using AI opponents to simulate how you should play this, because I don't feel like pinging the @PCFA role on the Discord, which is how you would find matches if you aren't aware. So today we'll be having Otstarva be our lovely volunteer. Otstarva is a prime candidate here for this build to shit on, as the kids would say, because he does not have a lot of AP. We'll be on Parabolic because that's what you'll be playing most of your multiplayer. When it comes to this build, much like the last one, the first thing you're going to want to do in combat is to pop up your missiles and open up your relation missiles, and then you're going to immediately want to start jumping in the air, firing missiles, and firing whale guns while trying to keep the enemy in between 500 and 600 meters away from you. This continued barrage of missiles and handrail will take down almost any light to medium weight build. As you can see, Otstarva is kind of melting here under the continued fire of the missiles and the handrails. A real player would probably have some kind of missile countermeasure, either a machine gun, which you can use to destroy missiles in your face, or some flares. However, Otz is ill-prepared, so we can just keep spamming him down with missiles and the railguns. In the event that your opponent does have some decent close-range counters, you can always purge your missiles and your handrail, and usually you do want to purge both of them at once due to their very high passive energy drains, and then just go in with your Motor Cobra and Traverse. Something to note about the reverse joint builds is that once you have dropped your high energy consumption weapons, you'll have a lot more energy free than you normally would on a 5-head. So you can do things like chain boost everywhere if you feel like it. I'll just show you an example here. With our high drain weapons on, you know, we still have amazing energy, but it's possible to run it. If we, say, drop all of our high drain stuff, though, it becomes kind of impossible to run out of energy almost. So remember, once you have dropped your high drain, long range, and medium range weapons, you can kind of spam the hell out of your quick boost to get in close. That is one of the big advantages of reverse joints, other than the jump. Speaking of the jump, you may have noticed if you've been playing reverse joint for a little bit that you can't immediately jump again after hitting the ground. This is what's called a hard landing, and it briefly stuns you on landing because you fell from too far up. To cancel this hard landing, all you have to do is quick boost as you hit the ground, and you'll be able to jump again. This is just a very basic overview of this concept. If you'd like a better and more detailed guide on how to move on reverse joint, please check out Hawk Brothers' video down in the description. He's a great player and taught me and a lot of people in the community a lot of what they know. Now, the last thing we have to talk about is something that makes this AC especially powerful: the paint job. You may have noticed this paint job is, for lack of a better term, fucked up. This is an essential part of the build. You have to make sure it looks like this, otherwise it won't work. To go over in a little bit of explanation, all these color choices, the arms and the head, rather the left arm and the head are in the original color scheme, and every other section of this is a texture bug that's been recreated from a different game. So on the chest we've got the good old Half-Life Source Engine texture bug. Legs, we have what RPCS3 looks like if you don't have right color buffers on, and for the arms and the weapons we've got the good old Verdict Day, right color buffers off, no textures. Funny. Again, if you don't use this this color scheme, can't guarantee how effective the build will be. All that in mind, with these colors available to you, I believe that you guys are qualified to pilot this build. If you enjoyed this video, or if it helped you at all, please subscribe. Again, I want money.